If you don't take anything else away from this video, don't use Tinder. Save yourself. Save yourself. Hello, everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all, and today I want to talk about dating apps. Love them or hate them, chances are you've had to use one at some point. According to research on how couples meet in the US, over half of people meet their current partner online, including through sites like OKCUPID, TINDER, and HINGE. This is a far cry from how our parents and grandparents met, through neighbors, family, friends, church, or even just at a bar. However, with the slow dissolution of third places and the increasing ubiquity of social media in order to stay connected with people, dating apps will likely continue to play a major role in how we find our significant others. But if you're going to invest a lot of time into online dating, you probably want to know which one of these apps will be the best for you. Think about it. It's not unlike picking out which bar you want to hang out at in order to try and meet fellow singles. Do you go for the jazz lounge with more of a speakeasy vibe? Maybe the punk dive bar or the college town pub with trivia nights? If you walk into the wrong one, you'll likely have a much harder time finding a person you're really compatible with. So, to help with this quandary, I have undertaken the frankly ludicrous task of testing every major dating app, so you don't have to. I have taken copious notes of my experiences on OkCupid, Hinge, Tinder, and Bumble, and I'll be sharing what I found in this video. But first of all, in order to add some degree of scientific rigor to this video that goes beyond just sharing my diary entries and ramblings, I will be rating each app on the following aspects: how many likes I received per day, how many matches I got, how many of those turned into messages and/or dates, the quality of the app itself, the price and the value of premium features, and how closely I feel like the people on the app match the sort of person I'm looking for. Naturally, a lot of this is very subjective, but I want to make clear that I'm doing this based on more than just general vibes. I spent about a week on each app at least, focusing on it for as long as it took me to run out of either free likes or new matches for the day. Editing Evie here, and I am stopping by to tell you all about today's sponsor, BEDUCATED. If you haven't heard of them yet, BEDUCATED is an online learning platform for adults that is dedicated to providing accurate information about human sexuality and relationships. And they have some fantastic resources. They have over 100 courses that can teach you all about sexuality, dating, and how to have better relationships. You can begin from the basics and give yourself a strong foundation with courses on topics like dirty talk, foreplay, and communication mastery. For the non-monogamous, they have courses on how to navigate non-monogamy, as well as popular topics like threesomes and even what to do if you start to fall in love with somebody else. And for the kink curious, they have so many courses on topics like spanking, bondage, wax play, rough sex, play fighting, as well as advice on how to do a BDSM relationship the right way. They also have some fantastic courses on things like sex and disability, endometriosis, and chronic pain, which is so often looked over in resources like this, but not on BEDUCATED. So for Valentine's Day this year, why don't you give yourself or your partner a fantastic gift that is so much better than just the regular chocolates and roses? The knowledge you get from BEDUCATED will keep serving you and your relationships long after Valentine's Day is over. And just for Valentine's Day, you can get a total of 60% off with code EVIELUPINE at checkout. That's EVIELUPINE. They also offer a 14-day free trial in case you don't love it. So give yourself or a loved one the gift of reconnection for Valentine's Day using the link in my description box with code EVIELUPINE at checkout for 60% off. I am sure that you all will get some amazing things from BEDUCATED. Thanks to them for sponsoring today's video. And now back to what we were talking about. I took this entire process very seriously. I made legitimate profiles and I used a variety of what I thought were good photos, showing my face with and without makeup, showing myself doing some of my hobbies and various physical pursuits, and also a cute photo of my dog on the ones that allowed me to use a non-human face in one of the shots. I am always very clear and direct about what I want from a relationship and what I'm looking for in a person in general. I talk about what values are important to me, what I do for fun, and how I connect with people best. Essentially, I try to give people things to talk to me about that aren't how I look or just asking me about how my weekend went. I found this to be a generally more successful approach, and most people tell me they like how direct I am and that I know what I want. Although I guess people that are put off by that wouldn't talk to me if that was something they didn't like, now would they? So it's not perfect. It's not a perfect system, okay? I'm not going to walk you through how to set up an account on each one of these apps because this is not a tutorial video, but hopefully that gives you an idea of how I approach this process and, again, what I think generally works for me to attract the kind of people that I want in my experience. But without further ado, let's get into the first review because we're going to start with number 1, OKCUPID. And this is my old reliable. OKCupid was the very first dating app I ever tried about 8 years ago, and it was the only one I used for about 5 of those 8 years. It's not really the control for this video, but it is something that I am going to be testing the other apps against, which is why I'm starting with it. So over the course of the time I was on this app, I lived in many different places, and I got a good sense of the kinds of people that were on there, and also I got to observe how it's been different over time. Unlike most of the other brands we'll talk about here today, OkCupid began its life as a website way back in 2004. OkCupid set itself apart using a feature called Match Percentage, which at least originally used a combination of answers to quiz questions and standard search criteria like age and gender to predict how likely it would be that you would be compatible with someone. The more questions you answered, the more confident the match percentage would be, so the theory went. This, alongside a more traditional dating profile layout that allows for much longer answers than is typical for today, it all meant that OkCupid at least was less focused just on looks. I remember when I first started using the site, you could sort results by match percentage and get a descending grid of people ranked from highest to lowest match percentage. And while photos have always been important, they weren't the sole star taking up the whole screen like they are today. However, since being purchased by Match.com in 2011, the site has increasingly moved away from its roots. The quizzes are still there, but it's different. If you didn't know, Match's parent company, Match Group, also owns HINGE, TINDER, Plenty of Fish, and The League, which is a whole story by itself. And it's clear that they've made virtually all of their brands more and more like Tinder as time passes. For one, OkCupid now is much more swiping and photo-focused than it previously was. Upon logging into the site, you're greeted with an array of categories to choose from: recommended, super likes, Cupid's picks, and match percentage. These are called stacks. Normally, I would just go right for match percentage and ignore all the other ones, except for maybe like sporadically checking on super likes, but for the sake of this analysis, I went through all of them for you. Recommended seems to be a combination of people who have super liked you and random people all across the match percentage spectrum who, frankly, have never been the sort of people I would otherwise match with. For reference, for this video, I am 30 years old, I'm polyamorous, I'm liberal, a-religious, and I'm queer and also vegan. I've had the recommended section show me more conservative, religious, and monogamous men than I have ever seen anywhere else on OkCupid. So I have no idea what the recommended algorithm is, but it appears to be garbage, or at least not based on the kinds of people that I like. The Cupid's Picks section includes 3 standout profiles the site believes you'll be the most compatible with, and the people they pick change daily. Unfortunately, you can only match with these profiles by super liking them, which is a premium feature and thus requires a financial transaction. Yay! You get 3 free weekly super likes with a $45 per month premium subscription, although all users get one for free every week that doesn't roll over. You can also buy super likes in bundles for a few dollars a piece. They also have a basic subscription for only $35 a month that doesn't come with super likes, but does allow you to have unlimited standard likes instead of the normal limit of around 30 every 12 hours, and the ability to set deal breakers in your search parameters. Tired of seeing 45-year-olds when you've set your maximum age to 35? You have to pay for that. In order to keep things fair, and because I find the idea of paying for any of these apps ridiculous, I only use the most basic free version of each of these apps to see which ones suck the least without having to fork over any money. I find the match percentage stack to be the most useful as it functions the most like the older website. You see people in descending order based on their match percentage with you. I usually find that anyone above around 94% is someone I'll likely consider just talking to, so once it gets below that point, I'll take a pause and stop using OKCUPID. Now, because I have used this site before, my results were not totally fresh. However, I had taken a several month-long break before deciding to test everything. I never got close to using my maximum number of likes in a day, and it did take well beyond my dedicated testing period to dip below my match percentage threshold. One thing I have consistently noticed, though, and other people in my life who also use OkCupid besides me have also seen this, is that once you get below a certain percentage, OkCupid will just keep recycling the same profiles to show you over and over again. This happens even with profiles that are like a 98% match. There are a few people that I have never liked, never engaged with, that I've been seeing on this app on repeat for years, no matter how many times I tell the app, I am not interested. This problem is way more pronounced than it is on any of the other apps, and I'm going to assume these are people who have liked me first, but I'm not totally sure. I do think in general, though, that the match percentage feature does work pretty well in terms of it being more or less accurate in showing me the kinds of people that I want to see. And that being said, I do think they have lowered their standards as the app has matured, and I see people now getting much higher scores than they would have before, despite the fact that I can see how many questions we've both answered differently and how many things we disagree on. And I think this level of disclosure is a really neat feature that basically no other app does, because you can go through people's answers to every question and see exactly what you're different on. I just don't understand how they can think that someone who disagrees with me on 75% of the questions I've answered could have a 99% match with me. I have to imagine this is at least in part because the growth of the website has slowed down and they want to keep you on the app for as long as possible, so they can't just tell you they have no one for you to swipe on, so they just recycle people. They're fluffing the numbers, basically. I've also noticed the website has more and more issues than it used to, especially over the last couple of months. I had this weird thing happen where I can only see the first photo of someone's profile, and in order to see the rest of their photos, I have to click on their match percentage information and then click back out. That fixes it for as long as I have the tab open. Come back the next day and the same issue occurs, and it only fixes it for that one account, not all of them across the site. I've also had issues with email notifications working properly, and when I tried to update my profile information, I had issues with it not displaying correctly and being virtually unreadable. Like it kept replacing things with like a string of random symbols. It's clear that OkCupid, especially the browser version, is an older website that maybe doesn't have the manpower or focus that it once had. But it is still pretty usable. The browser version doesn't constantly pelt you with advertisements to upgrade to a paid version. There's no advertisements, and the number of likes per day are viable. And I find that people on here are among the most suited on average to what I'm looking for. I have had numerous long-term, multi-year relationships with people who had a 95% match percentage and above with me on this app, including into the current day. Almost all the dates I have gone on because of this app have at least led to a second date, if not a short-term relationship. I'd estimate only about 15-20% of the dates I've gone on because of OkCupid didn't result in at least a second date. I think that's partly because of me and how I date. I like to take my time getting to know people before I commit to an outing, which that by itself just weeds a lot of people out. But it's also because of how the website is designed too. If you're a verbose person who likes to read and has a lot to say about yourself and makes hour-long YouTube videos, OkCupid is a better fit than some of the other options. That also makes it, I think, a lot easier to get a good first impression on how compatible you might be about someone, because you're getting so much more information about who they are, their interests, how they describe themselves, and you can also see how they'll talk over places like text. And also, OkCupid was one of the first mainstream dating apps to allow for open relationship profiles, where you could sync with a partner on your profile and say you were looking for non-monogamy right there in the search parameters. They were also an early adopter of inclusive language, things like pronoun tags, and they still have one of the widest selections available for sexual orientations and gender identities. While I wouldn't say that OkCupid is an explicitly queer app by any stretch, it's still more queer-friendly than a lot of the other popular options are. Even if you're straight but looking for a non-monogamous relationship, OkCupid is easily one of the top 2 mainstream apps to try for that reason alone. It is also very kink-friendly, and they include options like leather and switch under their identity options, which no other app does, at least in the mainstream world. And this is an extremely niche preference, but I do like that it is one of the few apps that lets you list your dietary preferences. I wouldn't call my veganism a dietary preference, but the fact I can easily scan for it in profiles and list it in my own profile is really nice. No one's getting jump scared by me being a vegan. Saves time and all the constant awkward, hey, so I really like you, but before we plan a date, by the way, I'm vegan, really, really helpful in that department. But overall, I found the average person I'd see on OkCupid with a high match percentage to be a good fit for me. It attracts a lot of non-monogamous, kinky, and alternative folks, as well as trans and queer folks, especially bisexual and pansexual people, in my experience at least. The people that I saw on it tended to be looking for relationships and were clear about what they were looking for, rather than just being open to whatever was out there or not even knowing why they downloaded the app. I also think I'm in the ideal age range for OkCupid. Back in 2010, the average user was in their mid to late 20s, and I believe that holds true today, if not moving a little bit older. As someone who's 30 and generally dates people between, say, 28 and 42, I feel like I see a lot of people in OkCupid who are in a similar place in life as I am, at a similar age. And with the question answering feature, I could very quickly teach OkCupid myself what kinds of people I'd be compatible with, instead of having to go through hours or even days of swiping no on obviously wrong people first. It learned who I wanted to see way faster compared to basically any other app, and showed me the most diverse range of people. So overall, I recommend OkCupid for people between 25 and 40 who have a clear sense of what they want, and if they value written and verbal communication over first impression physical attraction when matching with people. Because of how long I've been using the site, I couldn't tell exactly how many likes I was getting per day while testing it, but I was able to match with about a dozen people, and several of those turned into conversations and then dates. So my overall score is 8 out of 10. But OkCupid is far from the only app I tested. So here we go, on to number 2, Hinge. So previous to running this test, I'd never used Hinge before. I'd heard about it, but just never felt the need to use it between having OkCupid and a smaller, more niche app called Field that's focused on non-monogamy and kink. But I have heard it constantly recommended as the best one for serious relationships, so I knew that I'd have to try it. As I've already mentioned, the same company owns Hinge as well as OkCupid and Tinder. The commonalities are immediately apparent as soon as you try more than one of them, which we'll talk about in a minute. The account creation process is the same as most of the other sites too. You're encouraged to include as many pictures as possible, and you also fill out a number of prompts. I really liked that Hinge allows for a voice prompt and a video prompt. I imagine this not only can help cut down on bot profiles, especially the video prompts, but hearing hearing someone's voice can be a major contributor to how attracted you are to someone, not to mention the obvious accessibility factor, too. Coming from OKCUPID, I was a little miffed, let's say, at how little room I seemed to have to answer the prompts. Little did I know what was coming later on, but this was made a little better by the fact I could add additional information under certain subsections, like where you say what relationship style you're looking for. And unlike OkCupid, many more of their filters are behind a paywall. And despite the fact that I had anyone over 45 and monogamy checked as deal breakers, that seemed to not ever really work at all. Even today, I still get the odd person listed as looking for monogamy showing up in my feed. And some people seem to game the system by listing looking for monogamy, looking for non-monogamy, open to whatever. Like, just pick every different relationship option, seemingly to show up on as many people's feeds as possible. And maybe that's just me being a little too skeptical, but I have trouble believing that many people are both open to monogamy and to non-monogamy while single. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I assume this all happened because I don't pay for premium. Like OkCupid, Hinge offers 2 paid tiers. The cheaper option is also $35 a month with a $17 one-week option, and the premium option is $50 a month. While their features were broadly comparable to OkCupid, I feel a few things did stand out. One is that they were more aggressive with marketing these premium features, and they are also much more restrictive with free likes, which incentivizes people to pay for a subscription. On a basic account, you only get 8 likes a day compared to 30 or so that you would get on OkCupid. When you first download the app, you can burn through these in a few minutes. I'd heard before I started using Hinge that they allegedly put all of the hottest, most attractive women to the front of the queue when you start using it to incentivize you to use your likes as quickly as possible, so you're more likely to then pay for extra. And this, I think, is 100% true. I almost couldn't believe it. OkCupid has always been sort of general about who it sends my way, even after I would take a 6-month-long break. But with Hinge, for the first 2 days I used it, and for the first few days I'd come back after a long break, I would see almost entirely cis women despite being open to all different genders. I never had this experience on any other app I used, and it was definitely a weird thing to do because it was very clear when it ran out and went like, okay, now we're just going to show you all like cis men again. Very bizarre. This ultimately led to me deciding to track how many likes I got per day and how quickly it took me to get through my likes. For the first 3 days I was on the app, it took me about 20 minutes or under to burn through my 8 likes, and I got on average about 20 likes myself per day. It took me 5 days of consistent use to not run out of daily likes. In the time I used the app, I got about 120 likes total, and I sent out about 50 likes myself, not including like backs. So out of all of those, only 7 resulted in some kind of actual back and forth messaging, and only 2 of those turned into dates, and one of them was also with someone that I'd actually seen on other apps multiple times before, and then I decided to finally talk to them through this one. Neither led to a second date, though, and please note, dear viewer, I am not the kind of girl who is afraid to send a first message. Most of my long-term successful relationships have come from me being the one to break the ice. So then, why was there such a big difference between my experiences on OkCupid and Hinge? I think part of it is because I was liking people quite a bit more than I normally would, in part because I felt very incentivized on Hinge in order to teach the algorithm to send me more people that I would actually really be into. I felt like I needed to incrementally teach it. Oh, I like this piece, I like this piece. I would see little elements on profiles that I would like. Even if the whole picture of the person wasn't somebody I would want to date, it'd be like, oh, they're vegan, they're polyamorous, we have the same hobbies, we both like Pomeranians. And I'd like it for that reason, to teach the algorithm there was something in that kind of profile I enjoyed, because originally it had no idea what I like. So I felt like I had to sort of baby step it into really showing me who I was truly into. And because of that, I was not necessarily getting the return on likes that maybe I would, where with OkCupid, usually if I'm liking someone back, I'm at least messaging 1 out of every 3 people. I'm not somebody who, just likes a bunch of people and then never sends any messages. There's a reason I typically send a like. And using Hinge and a more algorithm-based system as opposed to a question quiz-based system, it was definitely a different experience because of that. And I haven't necessarily found algorithms in that way to be the best, especially for shorter term app usage. But overall, I don't think the problem was because I didn't fit the mold of the average type of person on Hinge. There are lots of non-monogamous people on the app, and like OKCUPID, the average age skews to the mid to late 20s and up. It also had mostly people looking for relationships, like I expected, rather than hookups, and the general vibe of the kind of person I saw on there most of the time seemed to be close enough to me, especially after a few days where I had trained the algorithm by then and it got a better sense of who I was looking for, like I just talked about. And it did eventually catch on. I think the problem is best summarized by what I wrote in my journal about this at the time. Quote, "There's an average of about 3 sentences of text total per profile. Makes it very hard sometimes to know if you will like someone. Example, the way to win me over is to cook me something. I go crazy for my cat. The key to my heart is making me laugh. I have learned nothing. How does anyone decide anything?" So the vast majority of people on Hinge will have these innocuous, nothing, one-sentence answers to every question, even when they have room to say more. Like, okay, Brandon, we get it. Everyone else loves Taco Tuesday and margaritas too. Tell me about your soul. Tell me about a book that dramatically changed the course of your life. For a wordy person who loves deep conversation, this kind of thing is hell. I can read someone's entire profile back to back, see they check the necessary age and non-monogamy boxes, and have zero sense of who they actually are as a person. People did put an effort with the more aesthetic side of the profile, and I did appreciate that, but that's not enough for me. I don't want to invest time in a conversation that won't go anywhere, which means I'm way less likely to engage with someone if all they give me is taco cat karaoke. There's also a distinct personality that emerged when I was on Hinge, especially at the beginning, and I did not notice this anywhere else. And it was mostly people trying to be funny, and it just didn't click with me. A lot of space was used for making quippy one-liners about J.G. Wentworth commercials and what their therapist thinks about them. And, if I had to sum up the average Hinge user, he would be straight person, open to non-monogamy, who lives in REI clothing, loves hiking and cats, and thinks they're funny while also claiming they have a golden retriever personality. If I see one more person claim they have a golden retriever personality with no evidence to back it up, I'm going to explode. Maybe they mean they're just happy to be around and don't really say all that much themselves. I don't know. It is just the most nothing, non-offensive statement I can think of. And again, I say, tell me the truth. Tell me about the depths of your soul. Give me something to emotionally connect with. The despair of a Victorian heart trapped in the algorithms of dating apps. My God. And sort of on a somewhat Victorian note, I also found Hinge's Rose feature, their version of super likes, to be a little frustrating. Like on OkCupid, they refresh regularly and you get 1 free rose per week. Except I'd see the same standout accounts for weeks on end consecutively, and only after months would they appear in my general match potential pool. After the first week especially, Hinge had started to sort by gender in a really weird way. All of the women were behind the standout feature, and all of the men were in the general discover feed. Hinge would occasionally give me a profile not in the standout section where they'd label it as most compatible and they'd say, hey, we think you two are really compatible. We're highlighting this just for you for free. And that was nice. This was way more accurate than the recommended section of OkCupid, and I did like that it wasn't behind a paywall. Despite my gripes, though, I ultimately liked Hinge and decided to keep it downloaded on my phone. While it was less successful for me than OkCupid, at least to this point, over the last couple of months, it has resulted in dates, and I see people on there that are unique to the app that I wouldn't see anywhere else. I feel like it's good enough to use while free, and I don't feel completely swamped by likes and messages, so I can actually take the time to go through everyone who likes me, read all the messages, and make sure to catch everyone that I'm the most compatible with. It's not the best, and depending on where you live, it might not have a very big user base, but something about it just gives me hope it'll work out at the very least. I don't get the creeping sense of dread that the app may be dying the way I do with OKCUPID. So overall, 7.5 out of 10. But out of the frying pan, into the fire, because next up is Tinder. Y'all, I'm not going to beat around the bush on this one. Tinder scared me, like actually scared me. This app has caused me to lose some faith in humanity forever. Being on Tinder was the single most confusing experience I've ever had on a dating app, and I hope I never have to repeat it ever again. If Hinge's sparse profiles were the first layer of hell, Tinder is the ninth and final circle of it. Not least of all because its gamified swipe-based looks-based design has infected every other dating app on Earth. Having a Tinder profile is an exercise in masochism. And listen, I knew from the way other people talked about it this was going to be the hookup app. But I had no idea how bad it really was. I thought I was prepared, dear viewers, but no, I was not in the least. I had some hope I might see some people I was compatible with, but those hopes, oh, they were so quickly dashed. The layout of the website is oddly cartoony in nature, and it gives kind of Marvel mobile game energy. Not a great first impression. Making a profile was nothing remarkable. It actually kind of reminded me of like a cross between Field and Hinge in terms of being able to select different interests and then also the ability to select multiple different sexual orientations, which I didn't see anywhere else, which I thought was actually a really nice feature. Needless to say, though, this app is probably the least LGBT friendly. The gender options are strangely limited compared to everywhere else, though. For being one of the biggest dating apps in the game, however, I was immediately struck by how buggy it was. I had to completely restart from scratch on making a profile when it was 90% done multiple times because the next button just wouldn't work. It also bugged out when I was trying to set up search parameters. Not that those seemed to really work at all either, because no matter what age range or other options I selected, I would always see people who were very far outside of my age range and even distance range on top of everything else. And at no point did it ever seem like Tinder actually learned what kind of person I liked more, no matter how much swiping I did. Algorithm? No, this is an onslaught. The point is to see as many people as possible or swipe as many times as possible, not get better at finding matches quickly. It also auto-detects your location versus you being able to set a location for yourself, which is extremely annoying to change without paying for anything. Like, maybe I don't want a Tinder user to know that they are 2 miles away from my current exact location. Like, that seems like not a great idea. And the filter options were just atrocious. Diet was included for what it was worth, as well as monogamy versus non-monogamy, but there seemed to be no settings for political leanings in the base version, and no deal-breaker options either. This clusterfuck resulted in the single worst user experience I have ever had on an app that wasn't a scam. I was constantly bombarded to pay for one of their 3 premium offerings, plus gold and premium, which range in price from $25 to $50, and that was on top of seeing a lot of profiles that were clearly bots, just advertising an OF account, or outright lying about their age. I even saw someone advertising their bootleg sneaker store. I might be able to tolerate that because it's funny if I saw anyone worth matching with, but the entire app is centered on photos so much that most people have at most one total sentence on their entire profile. Prompts? Who needs them? Most galling of all was the fact that you can't see who likes you without paying for it, unlike on Hinge, nor can you see who you've liked. I remember back when this was totally free in OKCUPID, or at least I think it was. Those days, they were so long ago, I can scarcely remember them now. But there seemed to be no rhyme or reason to who Tinder showed me whatsoever. This had a silver lining to it in that I never had to worry about running out of daily likes, so I never found out what the limit was. I believe it's about 25 to 50 based on your gender, which is kind of weird and gross. I would just basically either get scared or annoyed faster than it took me to find anybody to match with, and I never liked anyone first on the app. In total, I matched with 5 people, one of which turned into a conversation and no dates. Abysmal numbers when you consider the one feature every manosphere man complains about on Tinder. But women get all the likes. They have all the choice. And y'all, it is not all it's cracked up to be. For the first few days, I was able to tolerate being on Tinder for more than a couple of minutes. I had over 100 likes in minutes every single day. This feature feels engineered to make you want to buy premium, but for the opposite reason of a lot of the other apps. You don't know if any of the good ones are behind those 100 or 200 likes, and how long would it take you to find them organically, so just make sure to not miss anybody who's really good and pay right now to see who likes you instead of having to sort through all of this garbage. And knowing that all of the likes are probably not mostly going to be people that I'm really compatible with, it just made it overwhelming and nerve-wracking, and it was even a little depressing if I'm being honest. Like, what is the point of getting hundreds of likes from people who saw one photo of me and that's it? It's totally meaningless. Knowing you're just on the other end of a numbers game does not make being on Tinder a particularly pleasant experience. And okay, remember how I said that the way I date means that I feel like I am much more successful at converting matches into relationships, and that's also because I spend time getting to know people first? That doesn't really work on Tinder. That's like the opposite of their ethos. I am actually very proud of the fact that despite actively dating for over 10 years now, I have never had one of those horrifically bad date stories. No guy showing up with his mom or a weapon, no one who ends things by spitting at a waiter and then storming off, or anything like that. I've only really had normal dates, so I always wondered how on God's green earth do you find people that you're compatible enough with to like back, that you think could be good people to go on a date with, but you don't know each other well enough first to know who's going to blow up on the date or do something real freaky? But Tinder showed me exactly how that's possible. Not only were most of these people not looking for a relationship, they seemingly didn't know what they were looking for at all. They were confused about what the app was. The most common refrain I saw on profiles was, "I have no idea why I'm here. Oh well." Sure you don't, buddy. That combined with some of the outright aggressive profiles I saw made me realize, oh, that's how that happens. Yeah. I'm not kidding you all. On the second day I used this app, one of the first people I saw was a dude whose main profile picture was his gun and his sex toys together in the same photo. First up, horrifying. Just how is that possible? If the average Hinge user is a hiking enthusiast who thinks they're a comedian, the average Tinder user is a 22-year-old dude who takes one photo in his car from 6 angles, seatbelt on, while either saying, "Oh, well, I don't know why I'm here," or "Down for whatever, I'm an open book." God, I can't even really recommend this app to younger people, even though I saw a lot of younger people on the app, because this would be a terrible first-time experience on a dating app. I would never use one again if Tinder had been my first impression to dating apps. That's how bad it is. I don't actually know who the ideal person for Tinder is, because it's not just not safe for work, it's not safe for life. The only nice thing I could would say about Tinder at all is that I like how they included love and communication style preferences in their bio sections, although pretty much every straight cis man on earth just says physical touch, so that's not really all that helpful. But the interest tags were nice too. But there's really no reason to use it unless you want to slowly degrade your own self-esteem with swiping. I genuinely cannot recommend it to anyone. 1 out of 10, do not do, do not download. I am relieved that once I am done editing this and I know I have all the screenshots I need, I can get rid of this for forever. I don't have to think about Tinder anymore. What a blessing that will be, thank God. But there is one final contender on this show, and it's the only one not owned by the same company as the rest. Number 4, Bumble. Bumble has recently come under fire for some, shall we say, questionable ad campaigns, and I am going to be doing a follow-up video to this one where I explain exactly why I think every dating app sucks so much now. But Bumble is the newest of the bunch and was launched by former Tinder executive Whitney Wolfe Herd in 2014, following her split with the company. Since the beginning, Bumble was lauded by the media as being this new feminist alternative to Tinder that was going to shake things up. The fact this happened in the midst of the Gamergate era and its pushback against the businessy middle-class pop feminism of the time is, I think, noteworthy. How exactly was it supposed to be feminist Tinder, though? Did users have to prove they'd taken a gender studies course or read a certain amount of feminist theory to be able to make an account? Not exactly. According to an interview with Racked, the app was designed to give women power in dating. Quote, women are extremely independent in every facet of our lives, except dating. We wanted to encourage a confident connection. Making the first move, whether a woman is matching with a man or a woman, gives her a boost of confidence right off the bat. It immediately puts her in the driver's seat. As I have already mentioned, I find I have a lot of success with being the first person to message on other apps. Data from other brands like OKCUPID has suggested for years that women messaging first leads to more successful outcomes. So I totally understand the desire to build an app around that. It just maybe hasn't worked out in the long run in the way that they wanted it to. To this day, the main thing that makes Bumble different is 2 features. 1, women send messages first, at least if you're messaging a man and or you don't have opening moves set. And 2, you only have 24 hours after making a match to send a first message. This last part really threw me for a loop. I forgot this was a feature of the app when I first signed up, so I would log in later in the evening and then I'd swipe for a few minutes. With the way that I typically use other apps, I would swipe during the week and then I'd message matches during the weekend when I knew that I had more time to devote to a conversation. So imagine my shock when I would return to Bumble after a long day and a half, and it's Saturday afternoon, and I'd go to message people, and then I discovered that all of my matches had expired. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. Let's talk more about using the app, especially because it's the only one that's not owned by the same company. So, is it really that radically different? Not really. It was started by an executive from Tinder, after all, and that DNA is very apparent still. The process is still largely the same. You make an account, give some information about yourself, like your age and what you do for work, add some photos, and answer a couple of prompts. You get the picture. Bumble includes separate sections for interests, qualities you value, and communities or causes that you support. That last one especially was quite unique. And I did particularly like the inclusion of a separate value section, because I am a very value-driven person in dating, and typically I have to use one of the prompt spaces available to include this, so that was nice. But like Tinder, it does restrict some settings, like your location behind a paywall. Don't want your matches to know your exact current geographic location? Again? Too bad! Money, please. Yeah. While Bumble includes the ability to say you're looking for ethical non-monogamy in your profile, the ability to filter people by whether they want ethical non-monogamy is behind a paywall. Interestingly, the top of the list for advanced premium filters that I don't recall ever seeing anywhere else is height. In fact, the only major things you seem to be able to filter for free are age, distance, gender, and interest. The resemblance to Tinder became more apparent as soon as I began to swipe. On each of the days I would use the app, even if I was only on it for a couple of minutes, I would get over 100 likes, sometimes 200 or 300. In fact, in just the 2 minutes I had this app open again to reference some of the features I just talked about, I got another 45 likes out of nowhere. And I'm sure to a lot of cishet men who have been watching this video, me complaining about getting too many likes seems really weird, but there does get to be a saturation point where it is simply too much, especially on an app that has a 24-hour expiry window for matches. I felt this immense pressure to go through as many likes as possible, which you can't even do specifically if you don't pay for the app because, naturally you can only look at people who like you on a dating app unless you pay for it. So if you're just using the free version of the app, you're seeing this wall of likes building and building and building, and you can't really do much to chip away at it. And it's really hard to give every profile a fair shake when you've got literally hundreds of people to review to make sure you aren't missing out on any of the good ones. So I think in Bumble's desire to put women in the driver's seat, they actually made the underlying dynamics of dating apps worse. I almost don't even need to explain it because if you've ever used one of these apps, you know what I'm talking about. But in order to have the best chance of having any matches at all, men who are looking for women have to like as many women as possible while being as non-selective as possible. This results in them liking as many profiles as they can every single day, just hoping to get anyone to bite without checking for more than a passable level of physical attraction first, if that. This is doubly the case when women are the ones who have to send a first message and only then have 24 hours to do so. This, I think, only amplifies the scarcity mindset, and it makes men even less selective and more spammy with who they like. Likes then become functionally useless. On Tinder and Bumble, I have almost zero confidence any given match is really a match because of how few people are using the feature of sending a like to signal a genuine specific interest in me versus just hoping they match with anyone. And there is an opening move feature, which I did mention, which allows a potential match to answer a set question first in order to begin a first message. But even adding that in, it doesn't really seem to have changed this underlying dynamic, because all of this is further compounded by the fact that, like on Tinder, people put basically no information in their profiles. Again, one sentence, maybe. A lot of people only have pictures, and that's it. How am I supposed to know why you like me or if we have anything in common besides gym when you don't share literally anything? And I would maybe keep using the app to see just how it went, but there are two glaring and uniquely bad problems with Bumble in particular that kept me from ever really wanting to revisit it. And that is because out of all the apps I used, maybe neck and neck with Tinder, it seemed like somehow Bumble got worse at sending me people that I actually would like over time. By the end of the week, after swiping on hundreds, maybe more profiles, it was still showing me the same monogamous Christian types that I had nothing in common with and zero interest in dating. If, again, the average Hinge user is a person who loves REI and hiking, the average Bumble user is a monogamous Christian landlord or middle manager who wants a wife to watch football with him on the weekends. While I was never outright scared on Bumble the way that I was on Tinder, I couldn't help but feel like I had walked into the wrong place when I swiped on Bumble. Like I'd gotten turned around and walked into the mega church instead of to the coffee shop I intended to go to at the local strip mall. The app was aggressively heterosexual too, and the entire time I was on there, I saw one woman who wasn't posting as part of a couple, and no openly non-binary or visibly queer folk at all just while swiping normally. But there is one more thing that was a problem. My swiping on Bumble was constantly interrupted by ads. Like, what is this, TikTok? I know the app Her also includes ads, but for an app of this size and with the funding backing it, I was really surprised to see such invasive advertising. Huge negative, but okay. Maybe they're using the ad revenue they get to make their premium features cheaper? Without any clickbait discounts, their standard premium is a whopping $60 a month, and their premium plus, which is the equivalent to Tinder Platinum, is $80 if you pay weekly. With promotions, it can be as low as $30 and $40 a month, respectively. So, not in the end that much different than any of the other apps, except that it also includes the ability to extend their messaging timer, which is a thing that most of the other apps don't really have, anyways. And oh, I forgot to mention that they also prompted me to break the ice using AI, which is horrifying and just no, I thought we weren't supposed to have bots on dating apps. What are you doing, Bumble? Good God. But somehow, can believe it, I had results that were nearly as bad on Bumble as they were on Tinder, despite the hundreds and hundreds of likes because those are functionally useless. I only had a handful of matches and I talked with about 4 people, none of which turned into long conversations, much less a date. That could be because I'd been testing dating apps for about a month at the point that I started to use Bumble, and I was burned out and feeling a little weird about the whole situation. Like, was it really hard for me to find people I'd have anything in common with? Needless to say, Bumble wasn't the revolutionary feminist shakeup to the dating app game that people hoped it would be. It, in the end, ended up being the same old deal with a different coat of paint slapped on. What does set Bumble apart, though, in a positive way, is that it is more than just dating on the app. Within the same app, you can also use their BFF or biz modes to find friends or professional connections. I feel like those, especially the friend finder, would be way better than the dating side of the app. So overall, I would give Bumble 4 out of 10. It's not that anything was particularly bad about it, except the ads were pretty bad and the algorithm definitely sucked. It's just, it was a little worse at everything compared to any other app that I liked at all. And the features that are the most important to me, like avoiding seeing monogamous folks, for example, were all locked behind a paywall. Maybe if I was a young Christian woman looking for a guy to take to church, I'd have better luck on there, but it just wasn't for me. And with that, my dear viewers, we have come to the end of our dating app experiment. In the months between when I did the testing for this video and now, I have found myself revisiting both Hinge and OKCUPID whenever I felt like I wanted to try and get back out there, I've never touched either Bumble or Tinder again, which I think speaks for itself. While Hinge is far from perfect, it seems to be the best of the new, made-for-an-app dating site. Its user base is small enough and niche enough that going through matches is manageable without it feeling totally overwhelming, and it does seem to be pretty queer, kink, and polyamory friendly. I just wish people were a little more descriptive on it. Though, after seeing what I did see on Bumble and Tinder, maybe I should be grateful that I was getting 3 sentences and not just one. Though the audio and video prompt answers did make up for a lot of that. If I am pressed to pick a winner, though, despite its age and despite its flaws for a new user, I would still say first make an OkCupid account. If you're like me and you're in your late 20s and your early 30s, you are the perfect age demo for that app. And if you want to read about someone in depth before you match, there is simply no other place that lets you do that as much as OkCupid, and it has more filtering tools available for free compared to any of the other sites. I'd recommend giving it a try because, after all, it's not like you have to pick just one of these apps to use forever. I also found the user bases on Hinge and OkCupid, and also one big advantage to both OkCupid and Hinge is that they both focus on dating rather than hookups without attracting an exclusively conservative crowd, more the way that Bumble does. But at the end of the day, no matter which app you use to try and find love or just a relationship, none of them are particularly good for you. I mean, keep in mind, the winners for today only scored a 7.5 and an 8 out of 10. No matter your age, gender, or sexuality, using these apps can feel draining and make you feel hopeless about finding a good person if you have to stay on them for more than a couple of weeks. But I think this is by design. These apps, despite their cute tagline to the contrary, want us to stay as paying users for as long as possible. They all suck. But why? That is a question, my viewers, I'm going to try and answer in a follow-up video, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. If you are a human being that has used any of these dating apps, please share your thoughts and opinions down below. I really, honestly, more than anything, I want to know, has anyone else been scared by Tinder? Am I alone in that? Is this Portland a bad city for Tinder? Like, what was going on there, genuinely? I was not lying when I said it was the most confusing experience I've ever had on a dating app. Like, horrifying, nightmare material on Tinder. Dear God, don't use Tinder. If you don't take anything else away from this video, don't use Tinder. Save yourself. I need to just erase Tinder from my mind, honestly. Just not good energy, not good vibes in the slightest on there. But again, let me know your thoughts about all these different dating apps in a comment down below, especially, again, if you do have any sort of experience with Tinder, any weird date stories. What do you find works the best for you when using these apps? How do you use them? Do you use them all the time, continually? Do you take breaks? What's your system, you know? And again, if you want to make sure to not miss out on my follow-up video where I talk about why dating apps suck so much, please subscribe. And also, if you want to support what I do and you want to hear me live ramble and scream about how terrible things are, you can go to my Patreon where I live stream every single week. And if you do support me over there, thank you so much. It is what makes this channel possible. If you do already support me there, it means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.